We are back. We finished book 2 of the Mushoku Tensei light novel, and it was really good, and I want to jump right into it. If you haven't already, go check out my book 1 review. I will link it. There's also a Mushoku Tensei playlist talking about the light novel, so that will also be linked. As always, before we get into it, this will be spoilers, so if you have not read this and you want to, spoiler warning, don't watch this video. Without further ado, let's get into it. So where we left off last time in book 1 was Rudy was kind of, I guess, kidnapped, rather. His dad kind of knocked him out and shipped him off to go live with nobles, which essentially is Rudy's family. It's Paul's family, so it's not like he just sent him away to live with a bunch of randos. The whole reason that Rudy is going to this place is, for one, he is going to be the tutor for this girl. Her name is Eris. This is actually Rudy's second cousin, but he's going to go tutor Eris and teach her arithmetics and language and magic. He's also going to be tutoring Ghislaine as well, who is in turn, she's going to be teaching Rudy how to master a sword. She's going to give him some combat lessons because she is one of the best swordsmen. Anyway, we got all of that from Volume 1. Volume 2 starts us off. We are in the city and Rudy meets Eris. Eris is 2 years older than Rudy, so Rudy is 7 at this time, and Eris is 9. And Eris is a very angry girl. In one of their first interactions, they end up slapping each other. Rudy has a hard time trying to teach her, so he plans out this whole thing where he wants to fake kidnap himself and Eris, and that along the way, after they're being kidnapped, that he's going to show Eris why a lot of these things that he's trying to teach her apply to real world. In turn, Rudius and Eris actually get kidnapped for real. While they're kidnapped, Eris gets beaten several times and is really terrified. Along the way, Rudy slowly finds out that these are real kidnappers and not just actors of what they were hoping to get. It's not a fake kidnapping. They actually got kidnapped. It's really interesting to see in this situation, because Eris, once again, is like a young, naive girl. She's 9, and Rudy responds very differently to them being kidnapped because he is a 34-year-old man, so he stays pretty calm. Rudy's able to battle some of the bad guys with his magic and kind of sneak out. When they snuck out, they end up getting back to where their hometown is, because they're a few cities away. I can't remember the name of it specifically. Regardless, before they make it back, the guys show up and try to kidnap them again, but then Ghislaine comes and saves the day. She kills these guys, slices their heads off. And this is the first time that Rudy actually sees somebody die in this world and in his previous world, so it's kind of shocking for him. And then he asks himself all at this time, he says, I wonder what would happen if I died again. And it's not necessarily something that he's too fond of thinking that, but it is interesting because in isekais you never really think about that. There are some isekais out there, with the anime specifically, that kind of explores what happens if you do die. Most of the time, the ones I've seen is the person dies and then gets resurrected back into that world by some sort of goddess or magic. After Rudy and Eris and Ghislaine get back, Eris is more willing to listen, although she's still stubborn-headed, like she had a very traumatic experience, but also through teaching Eris and Ghislaine at the same time, Eris really listens to Ghislaine. She respects her, and so if Rudy's having a hard time trying to teach Eris something, he will have Ghislaine tell a story of back when she was adventuring about a time where she wished she knew these kinds of things, whether it would be math or language or how to read. At some point, Rudy comes up with this master plan to help Eris take a break. It's like an entire chapter almost dedicated to Rudy having meetings with Eris's other teachers, because her schedule throughout each day is just packed to the brim, 7 days a week, packed, and she only has free time to herself like in the evenings. So there's an entire chapter of Rudy kind of plotting out how and why she needs to have a day off. And it was specifically so he could have a day off, and I can't remember how the chapter ends, but I thought the line was very funny. It wasn't the whole chapter, but it was a few pages of the chapter, I guess, rather. But the line was right there. That was how I managed to get myself a day off. It's really funny because the whole chapter you're thinking like, oh, Rudy actually cares about Eris, which he does, but like it's still a selfish reason. Anyway, I thought that was funny. As we continue throughout the story, like Rudy's still, the 34-year-old man inside of this body is still a creep, but you see a little bit of character growth. There's a part where Eris passes out on his bed, and instead of like fondling with her and touching her, he thinks back to his previous life, and he's like, oh, I actually want to be a better person. I'm sick of being this slime ball. So I thought that was fun. We also learn that there's a lot of history to this world. There's 7 different main races, and there's also sub-races of demons, which include elves, and that's why Sylphie is like kind of looked down upon. She doesn't really like her hair or the hair color. There's also dwarves and halflings that we learn about. Haven't seen any yet, or talked to any of them, but we know they exist. Rudy wants to learn more of the languages, so he starts learning the beast language from Ghislaine. He also tells Roxy he wants to learn the demon language, so she spends a good chunk of time writing a book to give to Rudy. We get Ghislaine's perspective on Rudy and how she sees Rudy and the interactions and their teachings to one another. So that's very fun getting her perspective. She respects Rudy, and she also notices that Eris starts to take a liking to Rudy. At this point, it's been 2 years since Rudy had showed up to the noble house to tutor Eris. Rudy has a birthday at one point. I think he's turning 9 or 10. And Eris wants to do something really nice, so she convinces her dad, rich guy, what's his name, or her grandfather rather, Soros. I think Philip is her dad and Soros is her grandfather. Anyway, regardless, she gets this really nice expensive staff to give to Rudy for his birthday, and he loves it. It's super dope. We also get explained to how the staff actually enhances magic, because Roxy had a staff and now Rudy has a staff, and he talks about how it enhances his magic. His staff is called Aqua Hertia. Rudy also learns about his noble family power struggle. Philip, Eris's dad, wants Rudy to marry Eris and help him take back the throne. Obviously, Rudy's still really young. There's a point where Eris goes into Rudy's room and basically says, you can have your way with me in a roundabout way. But Rudy is trying really hard to be a better person. Alas, he succumbs to it, touching and rubbing. She kicks him and then like hits him, and then she says, no, you have to wait 5 years. And then at this point, after she leaves, Rudy remembers. He's like, oh, Sylphie. Yikes. One thing that I really thought was fun is at the end of most chapters, we get this little character stat sheet of Eris. And at the very beginning, it just talks about how she's kind of sucks and she doesn't really like anybody and she's kind of dumb. But we slowly get her progressing. So like at the end, it says people she likes. It usually would just say grandfather and Ghislaine. Now Rudius is on there. And then by the end of the book, we get her little stat sheet, and it says that she's in love with Rudy. It says people she likes, grandfather and Ghislaine. Person she loves, Rudius. So I thought that was really fun, kind of seeing her level up on a stat sheet, rather. We get letters back and forth between Rudy and Roxy. She talks about how she's been a tutor for the royal prince, who's a horn dog and a lazy bones. She roasts him several times, and then she actually ends up leaving because she sees the colorful sky and she wants to go inspect it. Rudy's using his staff, learning about it, how it enhances his powers. While him and Eris and Ghislaine are out and about, a light hero shows up. It's one of Perugius's warriors. He fights at the speed of light, and his name is Arumanfi. He thought Rudy was the one doing the colorful sky stuff. Anyway, light hits the ground and then engulfs like the entire area of where they are, engulfs everything. And then that is the end of the Fatoa region. We don't know what happens, other than we get in the next chapter, it talks about how Roxy is going to Buena Village, which is where Rudy and his family are from, because everyone's hearing about these rumors of people just disappearing. Then when she gets there in search of the Grey Rat family, she learns that everyone's missing. And then she sets out on an adventure to find Rudy and the rest of the family. She sees a letter that Paul left where he's like, hey, Paul says, hey, I've got Norn with me, but your mom's gone. Aisha and Lilia are gone. Everyone's gone. But basically he says, yeah, Rudy, like, I trust you. Help me find these people. If Rudy ever sees this, basically is what it is. So Roxy then goes out and decides that she's going to go find Rudy. And then we get another bonus chapter. It follows a guy named Bigot. He's a dude in the forest. He meets Ghislaine, and she helps him fight off some dudes because Ghislaine's looking for Rudy and Eris. And then Bigot decides to call her the forest goddess. It becomes the forest goddess Lane because I guess in his language he couldn't pronounce the word Ghislaine. Anyway, it's kind of a little fun chapter, I guess. I didn't care too much for it. But anyway, that is Mushoku Tensei, the light novel, Volume 2. It's fun. I'm loving this story. I want more of it. At this point, I've still seen almost all of this in the anime because we're well past this. I think the anime is into the teens of the volumes. I'm not too sure. I know that this took place, I think this was like halfway through season 1. It was a 2-core, like 24 episodes. I'm not exactly sure on that one. Regardless, this is still so much fun. I love reading this. It's a little more descriptive, and we get a lot of different perspectives as well, which I'm very fond of. So I'm having a blast with this, and I'm excited to get into Volume 3. So let me know your guys' thoughts down below on Volume 2. What were parts you liked, parts you didn't like? Who were some of your favorite characters? And what are you looking forward to come? Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and as always, keep it rad.